weareagoda.com.
Today, we're going to talk about how one single day, just one day in October, can decide the fate of billions of dollars for California's schools. Yeah, it's a huge deal. It's a story about data, tight deadlines, and ultimately the future of 6 million students. I mean, how do you even begin to do that? How do you fund 6 million kids across more than 1,000 school districts and do it fairly? Well, the answer is this massive, high-stakes annual data collection. And when I say high stakes, I mean it. Getting this right can make or break a school's budget for the whole year. And at the very heart of this whole system is something called CalPADS. Okay, think of it like the central nervous system for every single public school in California. It is the official record, the source of truth for who's enrolled, what services they need, and how much money the school should get. Now, out of the whole year, there's one day that matters most. It's called Census Day. It's always the first Wednesday in October. And it's like taking a single giant photograph of every student in the state. And whatever is in that picture, that's what sets the stage for a school's funding and how they're held accountable for the entire year. No pressure, right? Okay, so here's what we're going to cover. We'll follow the money from data to dollars. We'll see how this data creates a school's public image, how it helps protect students who need it most, and then we'll dive into the final sprint to get it all certified. Let's get started. All right, first things first, we need to look under the hood at the engine that powers basically every school budget in the state, and that's the local control funding formula. You'll hear it called the LCFF. So what's the big idea behind the LCFF? It's really all about one thing: equity. The whole point is to drive more resources to the schools that serve students with the greatest needs. Simple as that. The money is supposed to follow the need. And this is where it gets really important. These are the students the state considers high needs. So you've got English learners, kids who qualify for free or reduced price meals, foster youth, and homeless youth. Accurately identifying every single one of these students directly brings in extra money for their school. Think about it. One mistake one kid missed could mean one less tutor or fewer supplies for the art room. It's that critical. Okay, so all this data we're collecting on high-need students, it all gets funneled into one incredibly important number: the unduplicated pupil count. This is what's known as the unduplicated pupil percentage, or UPP. And this percentage, this is literally the key that unlocks extra funding. Now, that word unduplicated is super important because it's there to make sure nobody gets counted twice. Here's exactly what that means. Let's say you have a student who is an English learner and they're from a low-income family. If you were just doing a simple tally, you might count them twice. But with the unduplicated count, that student is counted just once for funding purposes. It makes sure the funding is about the unique kids who need help, not just tally marks. And check this out. There's actually a really interesting little grace period built into the system. The state knows that getting all the paperwork in at the start of a school year can be chaotic. So they have this 10/31 rule. Even though Census Day is in early October, if a family gets their meal application in by Halloween, the school can backdate it. They can count that student as if the form was there on Census Day. It's a huge help for schools trying to maximize their funding. Okay, so we've talked about the money, but this data does something else too. It basically paints the official public portrait of a school. What gets locked into CalPADS is, for all intents and purposes, how the world sees that school. I mean, picture this. A family is moving to a new area, and they're trying to pick a school. What do? They go online, right? They'll look up the school's profile on state websites, and the numbers they see, enrollment by race, gender, all of it, that comes directly from these reports. It's the school's official identity, their public face. So with so much on the line, how do you make sure all this data is actually right? Well, school leaders live and breathe this document, Report 8.1. It's the master file, the complete list of every student with every single detail. A smart administrator knows that a big error on a summary report almost always traces back to a tiny mistake for one kid on this list. This is where you go to find and fix problems right at the source. All right, let's shift gears to something that's maybe one of the most critical parts of all this. This isn't just about counting students for money. It's a legal requirement to make sure we're taking care of our most vulnerable kids and ensuring equity. And believe me, the state watches the special education data like a hawk. They're on the lookout for something called disproportionality. It's a huge red flag. It happens when a particular group of students, say based on race or ethnicity, is being identified for special ed services way more often than you'd expect. And this chart shows you exactly what that looks like. Imagine a subgroup makes up only 8% of the total student body, but when you look at who's in special education, that same group makes up 20%. Whoa, that's a big difference, and it's going to trigger a lot of questions from the state. They want to make absolutely sure kids are being identified for the right reasons, because they actually need the services. And this isn't just a friendly warning either. If a district is found to be significantly disproportionate, there are real financial consequences. They're forced to redirect 15% of their federal special ed funding. That money has to go toward early intervention services, things like extra reading help or counseling for all students, to try and address issues before they even lead to a special ed referral. Okay, so finally, let's talk about the mad dash to the finish line. Getting all this data finalized and certified, it's like running a gauntlet. There are hard deadlines, and there is absolutely no room for error. You can see it's a whole process. It really starts the moment school does, with collecting forms and cleaning up data. Then, bam, you hit Census Day in October and the snapshot is taken. After that, it is an all-out sprint through November to hunt down and fix every single discrepancy before those final certification deadlines hit in December and January. And during that sprint, data managers are wrestling with these things called fatal errors, and they are just as serious as they sound. These aren't typos. Look at Cert 004. A single student is missing their ethnicity data. That one error can bring the entire submission to a screeching halt. You can't move forward until it's fixed. It is a total all-or-nothing deal. So, when you step back from all the spreadsheets and error codes, the most important thing to remember is that this isn't really about the numbers. It's about what those numbers represent. Every single data point is a real student, and getting that data right is how we make sure every one of them is seen, is counted, and gets the support they need to have a real shot at success. It really makes you think, though, in this age of big data, how do we make sure we never lose sight of the individual kid in the count?
JR.com.